As companies move their data and services to the cloud, they're becoming increasingly concerned with how to monitor services that they don't operate. Monitoring cloud services requires some new thinking from how things were done when everything was hosted on premises. Many customers also want independent verification of their Office 365 availability and performance. We provide an impartial view of this data for your Office 365 tenant. We start with cloud security principles first. We never ask for a username and password and then try to store it securely somewhere. We've all seen that virtually all sites can be hacked, and if you've given the credentials for your global administrator to a third-party monitoring service, you can take the risk of whether they'll always be able to keep it safe. We rely exclusively on Azure Active Directory to make secure connections to our services. It's owned, operated, and maintained 24/7 by Microsoft. We'll never store your account information. We also don't store any of your corporate information. Your data stays with you. We only use public Office 365 APIs to monitor your resources. We use the security features of Azure Active Directory to securely connect and limit the scope of what we can do with your Office 365 tenant. Using these services, we monitor Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, and now Skype for Business. We also monitor one of the most important services in SharePoint Online, the SharePoint Search Service. It's critical because it powers much of the out-of-the-box content you see in SharePoint sites, as well as many custom applications. When there's an issue with one of these services, you decide how you want to be notified. You can receive emails, text messages, and you can also have us programmatically notify you using a technology known as a webhook. With the webhook, you can take these notifications and build your own workflows to respond to these issues. Notify your Office 365 support team, post information to your intranet to inform your users, filter notifications based on your needs, etc. We use a scalable cloud-based architecture to deliver health probes to check the availability and performance of your Office 365 service. This allows us to check the service literally every minute or two, and we send out millions of these probes each month. When there's a problem, we'll know in a minute or two because we're looking for issues with your individual tenant. Microsoft looks for issues at the service level. Because of that, there's a detailed and sometimes lengthy process that they go through before deciding there's an outage. That typically takes anywhere from 45 to 2 hours before they let you know there's a problem. By that time, if you haven't let your users know what's going on, then they'll let you know about it. They'll get frustrated, swamp your help desk with phone calls, and more. When you leave the monitoring to us, you'll be in the know and in control, so you can get out in front of these issues with your users fast. Businesses that have offices in multiple locations know that users can have different experiences based on where they're located. The Office 365 Distributed Probes and Diagnostics feature lets you install a monitoring agent on your corporate network in as many locations as you want. It works in conjunction with our cloud monitoring service to check the performance and availability of each location you install it in. You can set thresholds to notify you if retrieving content from Office 365 is taking too long. You'll also get reports that show you what the performance and availability is like from each location where you've installed an agent. When an agent is unable to connect to Office 365, which could indicate an Office 365 outage, it will run a set of diagnostics on the local network so you will know quickly and easily whether there's an issue with your network or with Office 365. One of the great sources of information when there's a problem with Office 365 is your users. The Office 365 Help Desk feature lets you harness that information. With the Office 365 Help Desk feature, you can select a service and request a phone number to report outages for that service. You can even select from one of 23 countries where the phone number can be located. You can then distribute that number to your users and tell them to save it to the contact list in their phone. Then if they start experiencing an outage, they can simply send a text message to that number. They don't need to remember any special codes or information to text to you. Just sending a message is enough. You can then decide how many of those text messages need to arrive and in what time frame for us to consider it an outage. When that threshold is met, we'll send out notifications to all of the email addresses, phone numbers, and webhooks that you've configured. It's great two-way communication as well because you can provide a text message to send back to your users. You can send one message when you haven't reached the outage threshold yet, and a different one if an outage has occurred. You can see all of the outages that have been declared from your users sending in text messages, as well as all of the text messages that have been sent in. If someone is abusing the program, you can also block their number. The Office 365 Service Info feature allows us to monitor changes that Microsoft publishes for the status of all features you have in your Office 365 tenant. Where we monitor Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, and Skype for Business, the Office 365 Service Info monitors every service down to the major features in that service. For example, in the Exchange Online service, it monitors the calendaring and email access feature. You can select which features you want to be notified of. When Microsoft changes the status of any major feature in any service in your Office 365 tenant, we'll send you the same emails, text messages, and webhook notifications. For example, if a major feature changes from the service operational status to service degraded status, we'll send you a notification. We will also bring you the current status of all the features and services in your My Info page, as well as the recent messages that Microsoft has published to your Service Health dashboard. The My Info page is what we call your 360-degree view of your Office 365 tenant. In it, you can see things like the current status of all your services that we are monitoring. Remember, this can be different than what Microsoft is showing because we detect outages within a minute or two, and Microsoft typically does not publish an outage for 45 minutes to 2 hours. The current status of all of your Office 365 services and major features is provided by the Microsoft Office 365 Service Info. You can drill down into each service to see the status of individual major features. All of the recent messages that Microsoft has published to your Service Health dashboard. A snapshot of the availability of your Office 365 services based on our monitoring. In addition to that, we help you keep track of when you may be entitled to a refund of your Office 365 monthly charges. Most Office 365 services include a service level agreement to have 99.9% availability. If we detect that your availability was less than that, we'll include links here that you can use to start the process to request a refund. We've used our own reporting tools in this same process to obtain a refund for our own tenant in the past. Search is one of the most important services in SharePoint Online. When it's not working right, you may experience issues with SharePoint applications, pages rendering correctly, or even finding data that you know has been added to your site. We allow you to create your own query that we'll use to test the query capabilities in SharePoint Online. You can have us let you know if it takes too long to run a query, or if a set of query results change, or if you get no query results back at all. We can also monitor the crawl times in SharePoint Online. Many customers get confused because they upload content into their site and then have no idea how long it will take until it gets indexed so it can be found by search. With crawl monitoring, we're constantly measuring how long it's taking for crawls to complete. Then we capture that information in easy-to-use reports so you can see how long it is typically taking to complete a crawl, when the last crawl completed successfully, etc. There are a ton of reporting options with your Office 365 monitoring. We start with 8 basic reports that are available out of the box that show some of the fundamental availability and performance data points for your Office 365 tenant. You'll also find reports that show the same sort of data measured across all of the Office 365 tenants we're monitoring. This enables you to compare the performance of your tenant versus others. In addition to that, we also have 17 advanced reports available. These reports give you a graphical view of things like your availability and performance, the reasons why your tenant experienced an outage, as well as geographical data based on locations where you've installed our Office 365 Distributed Probes and Diagnostics Agent. In addition to the reports that we provide out of the box, you can download the raw data that we use for all of your reports directly from our site. You can download that data as a CSV file so you can open it directly in Microsoft Excel and use all of the filtering, charting, and analytical tools that it provides. We also have integration with Power BI in Office 365. When you create or open a dashboard, you can add your monitoring data as a data source. When you do that, you'll get a copy of the dashboard that we provide, along with reports on the availability and performance of your Office 365 tenant. You can click on the reports to drill into the data for further analysis. We include data specific to your Office 365 tenant, as well as data from all of the Office 365 tenants we're monitoring. Again, that allows you to compare the performance of your tenant versus the Office 365 service as a whole. Finally, the other option you have for reports is to use our REST APIs to download your reporting data. The entire set of raw data we use for all of our reports is available to retrieve programmatically via our REST APIs. You can then use it to build your own web reports, integrate into your other line of business applications, and more. All of the monitoring features are based on something we call a subscription. If you need to manage tens or hundreds or even thousands of subscriptions, it would be difficult to do everything via the browser. Our monitoring features were designed from day one so that you could use them as a software as a service. That means we have a complete REST API available that you can use to create and configure all of your monitoring subscriptions. Our API is loaded with features to maximize your ability to manage your subscriptions via PowerShell, web applications, and more. We have extensive documentation on their use and complete code samples for every API we've published. You won't waste hours trying to figure out how an API works because you can see a complete working code example. So to wrap up today, we want to remind you that monitoring Office 365 services is increasingly important. We offer monitoring that provides a comfort level of independent, impartial assessment of the performance and availability of your Office 365 tenant. You get basic monitoring features, but so much more. There's the Office 365 Distributed Probes and Diagnostics, the Office 365 Help Desk, the Office 365 Service Info integration, the ability to monitor the search service in SharePoint Online, the My Info page, which is a 360-degree view of your Office 365 tenant. You get loads of out-of-the-box reports, integration with Power BI and Office 365, and APIs for retrieving report data and managing your monitoring subscriptions. So take the next step and turn on modern monitoring for your Office 365 services now.